I keep a coffee can on the corner of my bench, and right now it is full of nothing but failure. 41 little strips of basswood in there, every one of them cut for the same Kumiko panel, and every single one of them wrong. Kumiko, if the word is new to you, spoken Kumiko, is that delicate wooden lattice work you see in Japanese screens and lampshades, thin pieces of wood locked into a pattern with no glue and no nails doing the showing. I spent most of one winter trying to cut those infill pieces by eye, one at a time, and I watched them leave my hands too loose, then too tight, then gappy, then proud, never the same twice. Then I built one jig out of a scrap of oak, and the coffee can quit filling up. That is the whole video, one jig. Stay with me to the very end, because the last change I made to that jig is the one that doubled what it could do, and almost nobody bothers to add it. No judgment here, by the way. I did every one of these mistakes for longer than I would like to admit, and I blamed my chisel, my eyes, my light, my bench, everything except the real problem. The real problem was that I was asking my hands to do a machine's job, and my hands are about 60 years old, and they were never that precise to begin with. Let me set the scene the way it actually happened, because I think a lot of you are sitting exactly where I was sitting. The lattice that showed me every mistake I ever made. Kumiko starts with a grid. The Japanese word for that base grid is jigumi, spoken jigumi, and it just means the framework, the lattice of thin bars that everything else fits into. Picture a little wooden window screen with the openings maybe 3/4 of an inch across. Into each of those openings you drop small angled pieces that build up a pattern. And the classic one is the hemp leaf, called asanoha, spoken asanoha, which is that starburst you have definitely seen, even if you never knew its name. Here is the part that humbled me. Those little infill pieces are not square. They meet the grid at an angle, and in most simple patterns it is the same angle over and over, 22.5 degrees, again and again, dozens of times in one small panel. If every piece hits that angle, the pattern snaps together and looks like a machine cut it. If even one piece is off by a hair, you get a gap you can see from across the room, and a gap in Kumiko is the only thing anybody looks at. I want to add up what this was costing me before I show you the fix, because this channel is always about wood versus money, and this one surprised me. A bundle of clear basswood strips milled thin and straight for Kumiko, ran me about $18, and that winter I went through 3 bundles chasing a single decent panel, so call it $54 of wood turned into a coffee can of kindling. That is before the hours. I timed myself once, and I was spending close to 4 minutes per infill piece, cutting, checking, shaving, checking again. And a small panel wants 40 or 50 pieces. Do that math, and one little panel was eating 3 hours of bench time, and most of that time I was producing garbage. There are shops that will sell you a machined aluminum Kumiko jig for $90 or more, and I almost bought one out of pure frustration. I am glad I did not, because what actually fixed it cost me a scrap of oak I already owned, and about 20 minutes. So let us build the thing. I am going to walk you through it in order, the same order I would use if you were standing right here. Number 1, understand the one measurement that the whole jig is built around. Before you cut anything, you need to know your pattern's angle, and you get it from your grid, not from a chart on the internet. In a square Kumiko grid, the simplest infill pieces run corner to corner across a cell, and that gives you 45 degrees, or they split that in half and give you 22.5. Whatever your pattern is, there is one governing angle, and your entire job from here on is to cut that angle perfectly, over and over, without your hands ever being the thing that decides it. Write the number down. Mine for this panel was 22.5 degrees. That number is the soul of the jig. Number 2, build the jig body out of a stable scrap. You want a block of quarter-sawn hardwood about 6 inches long, 2 inches wide, and 3/4 of an inch thick. quarter sawn matters because you need this block to stay put through humidity swings, and quarter sawn wood moves the least across its face. I used a leftover piece of white oak from a chair repair. Flat sawn pine will work to learn on, but it will cup on you by August, and then your angle drifts and you will not know why. On the top face of that block, you are going to lay out your governing angle with a good marking gauge and a sliding bevel set to your number. Take your time here because this one line is the master. Every piece the jig ever cuts inherits the accuracy of this single layout, so if you rush it, you have rushed all of it. Number 3, cut the angled channel that holds the workpiece. Down that layout line, you are cutting a shallow trench a little wider than your strips and maybe 1/8 of an inch deep, so a strip can lie in it at exactly your angle, with a bit sticking out the working end. I cut mine with a router and a straight bit against a fence, but you can absolutely do it with a ryoba, spoken ryoba, which is the common double-edged Japanese saw, and a chisel to clean the floor flat. The strip drops into this trench, and the trench decides the angle for it. Your hand is no longer voting. That is the entire idea, and it is the moment everything changed for me. Number 4, add the registration stop so every piece seats identically. At the far end of the channel, glue in a small hard block that the strip butts against. Now when you slide a strip into the jig, it goes to the same depth every single time, which means the amount you pare off is the same every single time. This is the difference between a jig and just a fancy angled slot. Without the stop, you are still eyeballing how far the piece sticks out, and eyeballing is exactly the disease we are curing. I learned that the hard way after my first jig when I could not figure out why my pieces were the right angle but the wrong length. The stop fixed it in about 4 minutes. If you have built along this far, you already have something that works. Let me pause here because this is a natural spot to breathe. If you are enjoying these old methods, I put together something I think sits right next to this kind of work. It is my book, Kenji's Workshop, 100 Ancient Eastern Woodworking Secrets for the Modern Craftsman. It gathers 100 of these techniques in one place, and for every Japanese or Chinese species mentioned, it gives you a Western wood substitute you can actually buy at a normal lumberyard, so you are never stuck hunting down something exotic. If that is useful to you, the link in the description will take you to it. Now, back to the bench. Number 5, prepare your strips in a batch, not one at a time. This was a mindset shift for me. Cut all your infill strips to a rough length first, a hair long, all of them, before you pare a single angle. When I worked one piece, start to finish, then the next, I introduced tiny changes between them without noticing, because I am human and I get tired, and my grip shifts. When you batch, your hands settle into one motion and repeat it. So mill your strips, cut them a touch over length, and stack them next to the jig like a little deck of cards. You are about to turn all of them into the same piece. Number 6, make the first paring pass with a chisel, not a saw. Here is the quiet secret of Kumiko precision. You do not saw these to final fit, you pare them. A saw removes a kerf you cannot fully control and leaves a slightly rough face. A sharp chisel, called a nomi, spoken nomi, riding flat on the top face of your jig, shaves off a whisker at a time and leaves a face so clean it looks planed. You lay the strip in the channel against the stop, you rest the flat back of the chisel right on the jig's surface, and you push. The jig is the fence, the chisel just follows it. Your first pass gets you close. The magic is that the angle is already perfect, because the jig owns the angle, so all you are deciding now is how much to take off. And that is a much easier decision than trying to hold an angle and a depth and a straight line all at once. Number 7, test seat the piece into the actual grid. Do not trust your eye, trust the joint. Take that first paired piece and set it into a cell of your jigumi, the grid we talked about earlier. It will do one of 3 things. It will drop in with a soft, satisfying click and sit flush, which means you nailed it. It will refuse to seat, which means it is fat and needs another whisker. Or it will rattle, which means you went past it and that piece becomes a shorter piece for elsewhere in the pattern. No waste, no drama. The grid is your gauge. It is more honest than any ruler because it is the exact thing the piece has to live in. Number 8, dial the fit with 1/64th of an inch at a time. When a piece is fat, resist the urge to take a big bite. I cut mine to seat about 1/64th of an inch proud on the first pass on purpose. Then I sneak up on the final fit with paper-thin shavings, because in this work you can always take more off, and you can never put it back. A Kumiko piece that goes in with gentle hand pressure and holds itself there is perfect. If you need a mallet, it is too tight, and it will split the grid over a season as the wood moves. If it falls in loose, it is too small, and it will show a shadow line. Hand pressure. That is the whole target. That soft press is the sound of it being right. Number 9, batch the entire pattern and watch it turn machine made. Now, you run the deck. Same jig, same stop, same chisel motion, piece after piece after piece. Test seating as you go. The first time I did this, I sat there afterward holding a finished Asanoha panel, and I actually laughed because every single starburst was crisp, every joint was tight, and there was not one gap anywhere in it. A hand-cut pattern that looks like a factory made it, done with a scrap of oak and a chisel. That coffee can of failures suddenly looked like the tuition I paid to learn one simple truth. Precision does not come from a steadier hand. It comes from a jig that refuses to let your hand be the problem. Let me slow down here and talk about the ruts I used to fall into, because I promise you, some of these are yours too. And there is no shame in any of them. The pattern of trusting my eye on a good day. I used to think that on a rested, well-lit morning, I could cut these by hand just fine, and sometimes I could for about 6 pieces. Then focus fades, and a pattern needs 50. Consistency is not about your best piece, it is about your 50th piece matching your first, and no eye on earth does that. The jig does. The pattern of sawing to the line. For years I believed a finer saw was the answer, and I kept buying finer saws. The answer was never the saw. It was switching the final step from sawing to paring, from a tool that removes a chunk to a tool that removes a shaving. I could have saved myself about $80 in saws by understanding that sooner. The pattern of fixing fit by forcing it. When a piece was a touch fat, the old me would just push harder, and I cracked more than one grid that way. Wood-on-wood joinery only works when the wood is not fighting itself. A piece that needs to be hammered is a piece that will pry your grid apart from the inside as the seasons change. Fat means para. It never means push. The pattern of starting over instead of shimming the jig. Early on, if my jig's angle was a hair off, I would scrap the whole block and build another. You almost never need to. A single layer of blue painter's tape on the fence face nudges your angle by a tiny, repeatable amount, and you can tune a jig back into perfect in about 30 seconds. Demountable, adjustable, repairable. That is the whole spirit of this work, and it applies to your tools as much as your joints. All right. The bonus I promised you at the very start. This is the change that took my one jig and doubled it. The mirrored second fence. Most Kumiko patterns need pieces that lean 2 ways, a left-leaning piece and a right-leaning piece, mirror images of each other. When I started, I built 2 separate jigs for that, one for each hand of the angle, and I kept grabbing the wrong one. Then I realized the answer was already in my hands. On the back face of the same block, I laid out and cut the exact same angle running the other direction, so one side of the jig cuts the left-leaning pieces and the flip side cuts the right-leaning ones. Same block, same stop logic, one flip of the wrist. A 1,000-year-old temple in Japan is held together by joints that were cut demountable on purpose, so a craftsman centuries later could take them apart and repair them. And here I am doing the same thing on a scrap of oak, letting one small tool quietly do the work of 2. That flip is the whole trick. 1 jig, both hands of the pattern, no second tool to lose. So that is it. 1 jig, built from a scrap you already own, and a coffee can that finally gets to stay empty. If this way of working speaks to you, the deeper version of it lives in my book, Kenji's Workshop, 100 Ancient Eastern Woodworking Secrets for the Modern Craftsman. Inside, you will find the master's tips, the little insider shortcuts that used to take an apprentice years at the bench to pick up, laid out alongside clear photos and step-by-step instructions so you can take them off the screen and onto your own wood tonight. To grab it, just scan the QR code on your screen. And if you want to keep building this old knowledge back up with me, follow along here at Master Kenji for more lost Eastern woodworking techniques, one bench session at a time.